Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Strength Game Podcast. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this is episode number 4. The Strength Game is a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing all things physical culture with the coaches, athletes, iron enthusiasts, and experts deeply embedded in the strength game on both sides of the profession, both as coaches and as competitive athletes. I want to thank those of you who have liked, shared, commented. Your support allows us to continue to bring on experts and continue to highlight more individuals in the strength game, just like our guest today. In this week's episode, I'm joined by my friend and former supervisor, the one and only Johnny Olguin. Johnny is a performance consultant working privately with NBA athletes and college athletes individually. He's a former collegiate football player and collegiate strength conditioning coach with over 13 years of experience as a director. Beginning his career as a special education teacher and high school football coach, he transitioned, getting thrown into strength conditioning, working for the University of Texas as a grad assistant during the Longhorns' heyday under Coach Jeff Mad Dog Madden. After that point, he was never not a head coach, rising the ranks from D2 New Mexico Highlands to D1 FCS Texas Southern, eventually to D1 FBS Fresno State before his current position. He's a former equipment consultant for Pro Maxima and has been designing weight rooms for a long time. He also continues to challenge the norm and is always exploring new ways of enhancing training, recovering, all while providing his clients with cutting-edge performance approaches. I'm really excited to have him on today and listen to his unique insight and bring him to you. So with all that said, let's get into the game with Coach Johnny Olguin. Hey, so welcome everybody. I'm joined today with a good friend of mine and my former boss and continued mentor, Johnny Olguin. Johnny is the master strength coach by the CSCCA and a performance consultant working with NBA, individual athletes, and collegiate athletes still. He's a former college football player himself and has been a college strength conditioning director for over 13 years. So I appreciate you coming on the show, man.
Thank you, Nick. I miss you, buddy. I hope everything's good in California.
Oh, yeah. We're hanging in there right now. Hopefully the tides turn, but it's been definitely a whirlwind. Hey, so I wanted to first kind of start off before we got into anything, since I never got to do it in person. The conference got canceled. Congratulations on getting your jacket this year. And for most that don't know, the Master Strength Conditioning Coach honor is one of the highest awards you can win in the strength conditioning profession. It's only awarded to coaches that have been serving as professionals or in the collegiate setting for over 12 years. So congrats, man. That's awesome.
Hey, man. Yeah, it's a big club to be a part of. I know it was something important to me when I started this journey as a strength coach, is, being back from a earlier time, I guess, in the middle of what would you call it, of the turn from the 90s to the 2000s. It was an interesting transition for sure.
Oh, definitely. And that's a very unique and very small tribe right now. So kind of speaking on that, can you briefly go into how you actually got started into that career? What kind of sports you played growing up and how your training evolved to get to your current position?
Yeah. Whenever I think back and when I say what started me on the path of health and fitness or performance or whatever you want to call it, which is, I've always said, is a lifestyle, right? I would go back to when I was really young, like maybe 4th grade, and I got a chance to meet Arnold Schwarzenegger. And
Nice.
he was filming a movie, Twins, and it was in our town, Los Alamos, New Mexico, where they had made some of the movie. It was a laboratory town where I grew up. And so I got to get real close to the guy, and he signed some autographs, and he had some conversations with us. And I had Arnold Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding that I had stolen from the library, and I never gave back. And, I had notes in it. I had one of those old school weeder benches that I'd put in the front yard during the summer and train, thinking I'm in Muscle Beach. It was such a big culture thing back then with the pumping iron videos that had really came back around, and Muscle and Fitness with the pretty girls and the swolled up dudes, so it was all the supplements were out, everyone was on this stuff called cybergenics, and it was just a revolutionary time for health and fitness for sure. But that was one of my main pushes towards it, not to mention the sports part and wanting to be good in sports, but just really seeing how that guy had mentally, he was such a mental genius on how to create motivation within himself. And so I take it back to that.
Yeah, that's definitely an experience that not many people are ever going to get. And that's an awesome transition into actually getting involved in it. And you said it perfectly. It is a lifestyle, and that's how a lot of people end up getting involved. Kind of speaking on your coaching career and getting involved to your current position as a performance consultant, working with a lot of individual NBA players and still some collegiate athletes. How did you eventually get involved in coaching, and what was your path to your current position?
It's a great story, and it's one of my favorites to tell. I was at a football camp. I was an 8th grader, I believe, and it was during the time when Colorado football, the Buffaloes and Folsom were huge. And Jeff Mad Dog Madden happened to be the strength coach at that time, and it was still a new position. It was like 1975, I think, when it was an official title. So this was in the late 80s, and so it was still very few and far between that had actual strength coaches assigned to teams, much less departments, and the way it is now. But I was enamored by it. I walked into these facilities, and Eric Bieniemy was playing, and this guy had these quads, man. He was just like tree trunks, and he was one of my favorite players. And maybe because I played his position, I tried to wear his number. And I kind of went out to high school out there in Boulder High for a year, and so I really got close to that culture out there. And it was a beautiful area, and it was good football at that time. And Oliver Lucas, Coach Lucas, who was a phenomenal running backs coach, and I got really intertwined to these things. And as later on, it came about that's how I got my graduate assistant spot at Texas. Was I had kept an old flyer from one of the camps, and I ended up going to Texas because my stepbrother was a football assistant basketball coach there. Sorry, and so I got in there, and I got to get into the weight room, and I fell in love with this Texas weight room, and it reminded me of Colorado, and it kind of had the same principles coming across, the same type of athlete that they recruited from the inner cities. They had, in Colorado, they had a lot of inner city from California area and junior colleges, and at Texas, it was more of a pedigree. So it was an interesting transition from the two schools, but at that time, it was the Big 8. So it was really close, and then Texas comes in. So it was ironic how it happened, but I ended up giving him the flyer, Coach Madden, and he was kind of taken by it. And I had a lot of old videos from running backs and stuff that was back in Colorado that I had kept through camp. So we had something in common there, and it just kind of lined up where I ended up going to Texas as an intern GA, which was a life-changing point for me, where you got to be around Vince Young at this point now, and you got to be around Cedric Benson, who passed away recently, who was really close to me at that time. And he taught me a lot about Austin, Texas, and enjoying, the McConaughey up on the lakes and the houses in Lake Travis. And it was one of the greatest experiences of my life, was being through that national championship run. And I look back at it, and I think a bit how much of that foundation is really, runs through my veins, whether it was the chants that they did before practice, or listening to Coach Royal and Mac Brown talk under the misters, and just hearing the conversation and just being a fly on the wall, and being able to walk over in the evening and having Todd Wright and Kevin Durant across the street. And, you really get spoiled at an early pedigree. And I look back now, and I was like, I wondered if I really took advantage of those times there. Jamal Charles, man, he was a close friend of mine. And, he was a freshman then, and the stories go on and on, but definitely something that changed the course of my life for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Little did a lot of people know that time at Texas, the heydays, was going to blow up. You mentioned so many different coaches and athletes that went on to prolific careers in the NFL and the NBA. I mean, Todd Wright, all those guys, like Mad Dog, he's still prominent and well known by everybody, and that's awesome. I know you kind of touched on it, speaking on like just how much of an influence that made on your career. What were some of the big takeaways you took from there? Because I like to speak on my first experience being an initial intern, but you were at one of the highest caliber universities, or at highest caliber level of coaching at the heyday. How were you able to take away stuff from them, and what were some of the big pieces that you still use to this day?
I think looking back on the mentors I had there, the Donnie Mabe and Sandy Abney and Lance Sewell, these guys, they had been part of other big programs, and they come in there, and Ken Shepard, who was, the right hand of Mad Dog. I just had several characters that were really instrumental in me taking pieces from all of them. And I know we all do that, but, I think I was mixed with a lot of naivety, and I didn't understand the grand scale of what it was like to see, some of these athletes perform. I think looking back now that I was probably in trouble the most out of any graduate assistant intern that ever came through that program. And we were one of the first classes when it was really big for the CSCCA, 2013 and or not 2013, 2003 when it started really, getting hum and people started going over from NSCA to CSCCA and really being a collegiate strength and conditioning program. And learning how to run one of those was something that was important to the people that were around me, and dealing with like a Jermichael Finley I just think of all these things, Aaron Ross and Michael Griffin, all these DBs, and these athletes are just walking around. And now you look back and you're like, I was around some amazing athletes, and I didn't even really think I knew what I was around. I know I was in trouble. I know we talk about it when we get to conferences about the interns that we look back now that are all successful people, they're still in the programs. There's a lot of master strength coaches that came out of that first class. And we talk about how I had the walk of shame, the record for walk of shames. And what it was is we were on the top of Moncrief there in Texas, and they have a railway. So you walk, and it's a cat scale. So you kind of go around the offices on the top, and Coach Madden has videos, and he had intercoms, and so he could kind of see everything that was going on when he was in his office. And you'd get that microphone check where he'd say, Johnny Olguin, report to the office. And so I'd be walking up those stairs, and I remember just thinking how far and long that office looked, and everybody just watching me walk in there with their hands on their mouth, kind of like, uh-oh, what did he do now? And I, as much as those points when they happened, I was really upset about them, I look back now and they're one of my fondest memories, because I remember getting, they were kind of on me for being fearless and being naive to what I was doing. Like whether it was one time I was having Jamal Charles jump on some box jumps, and he kind of stumbled, and there was a conversation that, what happens if he hurt himself, we're all gone. And, there was just, man, I can remember Mark Henry going in there, the world's strongest man. There's so many different people that would come in, and he had this huge dumbbell that was in the back that, I don't know, it was 500-pound dumbbell. I can't remember the weight, but he would be the only person that would come out there and lift it, and I'd wait for him to come in to see him throw this thing over his head. And it was just little things like that, just constantly happening there. And so, they would teach the DBs, or not the defensive linemen, kung fu, and there's a gentleman by the name of Nick that would come in there, and Donnie Mabe, they're all real martial artists, and so they would throw their hands around, they'd teach you these fundamentals, and I would just jump right in there, and I just wanted to learn all the time. I was such a sponge. It was like Christmas every day, walking that campus. And I mean, it was every other sport. I think it was the three-peat they wanted. They liked the tower every time there was a one in baseball, football, basketball. That was the goal, was for everyone to win a national championship. And one year, baseball, football wins it, and I think basketball goes to the Final Four. So it was doable. It was so close, and you start to really feel these things. And like I said, it was life changing for sure. And I still keep in touch with a lot of those people. They're still big parts of my development to this day.
No, that's awesome. You hit on some big points. I think that, especially young, either interns or people interested in profession, just young coaches in general. I mean, you had the most walk of shames. I've heard stories of you some of the mistakes and everything you made. I mean, that was your first like environment and first kind of getting involved into the strength conditioning profession. So you were going to make mistakes, but I think the biggest thing is you jumped in from the get-go. You were willing to learn, and honestly, like as soon as you made a mistake, you learned from it. You were moving on, but you were always willing to get involved in it. And I think that's a big thing that coaches at a young age can get involved with. And you were dealing with the highest level athletes too, which is a hard thing because you treated them just like anybody else would. And I think that paid dividends when you moved on. And kind of touching on that stuff, after you left Texas, you were only ever a director going forward. I mean, you went from Division II New Mexico Highlands to D1 FCS Texas Southern, and then to FBS D1 Fresno State. What advice would you offer to those coaches that are kind of stepping in to a director role? And I know Ron has said the same thing, and you said this, you kind of reiterate the same thing. You don't know what it's like until you sit in the chair. So what advice would you give to coaches that are taking their first director role or now are in charge of a department?
I think after Texas, the interesting thing was it was such a brief time being there, but it had such an impact on me. And then going to the complete opposite, and that was one of the, at the time, it seemed ridiculous, like to go from Texas to New Mexico Highlands. But, there's every time I've taken a job, there's always been some type of connection, some type of, it was a bigger cause for me to take it. And I think with every job, that's how I chose them. At New Mexico Highlands, coming out of college, when I played football there at University of New Mexico, and I got in a little bit of trouble, and I ended up having to go mow lawns in between, I guess, your jobs at that time. And then I finally get picked up by New Mexico Highlands, and there's a gentleman, a coach by the name of Carl Farrell, who is renowned from Southern California, Northern California. He's from the Bay, and he was under the 49ers organization. And this guy really believed in me. Dennis Franchione was the coach I would initially started playing for, and he really wanted to put me in this slot position to play running back and run out of the backfield a lot more. And it ended up being like the Welker position later on in life. If I'd have been smart enough to understand that, but I ended up finishing my career at New Mexico Highlands. But this coach Carl, who I figured who saved my life at that time, he put me in a position where I was I had a chance to come back and finish something I had started, and really feel good about that. And I thought that was important. And he ends up bringing me into Highlands. And so when I went back, he had come back after having some prostate cancer, and he called me himself when I was at Texas, and he said, "Hey, I'd really like you to come back here and help me build this program. I'm going to build you a brand new weight room." And they built this huge, beautiful weight room there with Samson and power lift equipment. And I couldn't say no. And it was a way to get back closer to my parents who were there and in the Santa Fe area. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to take this because I believe in what's going on there. And it was a tough job. There's never been a program there before. It was bottom ground, but they had a great facility, and that was what attracted me. And I had a pool there. I had a really big pool that was close to my facility, and it was high altitude. It was almost 7,000 feet. It was like 6,000 feet, and a lot of outdoor snowboarding and things like that. So it ended up being a really cool situation to go back to and finish. But I always think, even when I took the next job going to Texas Southern, when it was a reference from Coach Madden for me to take the job, and a lot of people had turned down the job, and no one wanted to go to Texas Southern because it was in the middle of Third Ward, Houston, and they had a bad reputation of the monies, and there was a lot of issues with facilities, but having my dad, who's from Houston, who's a 40-year veteran coach, and a brother who's been in the business for another 40 years or even 35 years, they're really close. And so I had a strong family history there at Houston, and it was some place that I had never really got to learn as much as I'd like to about it. And it also has the best football in Texas and facilities that I've ever seen. And I ended up taking that because it was something that I felt I needed. I needed to see what the HBCU was like. And I think as you get into your career, I think it's the best thing you could do is to really absorb every place you're at. Whatever I got from New Mexico Highlands, building it from ground up, and then going into a completely different environment at HBCU and having amazing athletes, but not so great facilities. And at Highlands having great facilities, but not so much the athletes. And, just being able to make them both work for you. The city of Houston was amazing environment just to have the access to the Texans, have the access to Rice, and University of Houston was just starting to be built up with their new facilities, and and there's such a great history of Rockets basketball, and it's all right in the same area. They're still building the Dynamo Stadium, which we ended up playing in my last year there, and some of those athletes that I seen go on, man, they're tougher than heck, man. We recruited a lot out of Dayton, and I look at both these sides of the coin, of the Division II and one A, one AA. And I don't think I could have understood how to run a program like Fresno without those experiences, because, in Houston, you ride 15 hours in a bus and to get to Huntsville, Alabama, or, it's just tough. It's tough, man. And you got to be a tough person to be in the SWAC or in the MEACs. But the culture was so beautiful, from going into the Bayou in Louisiana and playing Southern for homecoming and just seeing the bands and the amount of people. It was great. It was just a great experience. And then going into Fresno, where you're kind of in the middle, of course, right? And going into Fresno, I ended up taking that position. No one really wanted it. It was kind of lower money. In fact, I think I made less money going to Fresno than I did when I was at the SWAC school. So I took like a $3,000 pay cut, but I believed in Coach Terry. He's a big part of my process. He was a big part of my development at Texas, and I thought that we were going to do amazing things there. And I just was glad we were going to be able to fly, and we didn't have to drive in buses. When I got there.
Yeah.
And and that was another interesting. It was kind of a combination of both Texas Southern and New Mexico Highlands, to where you didn't really have you had great tough athletes in a mediocre facility, but you're in the middle of California, and when I came in, there was Texas license plates all through the parking lot of the athletics, because Coach DeRuiter had just been hired from Texas A&M, and Joey Bose and all these guys are all coming from Texas, and so I kind of slid right in, being from Texas, and all the basketball staff. So Reagan Peagley, who was the women's basketball coach, was just coming from that area and ended up going back to TCU. So it was a good time to come in. They're rebuilding the whole facilities with the statue that's there in the front wasn't even there, so seeing the development of that, and then coming into a really bad program where they hadn't won any games, just like they hadn't won at Highlands, they hadn't won at Texas. And I would say, not to rattle on, but I would think that I would encourage everyone to take the jobs that no one wants and to build them, because when you do that, you get an understanding of who you really are instead of what someone else has created. And that's the whole part, is about creating something special, right? And doing it, not that you don't have help, but that you do it with your own decisions, your own mistakes. And there's no other greater teacher than the experience of that. And I was really animate about going the route of GA, absorbing that, going Division II, understanding that, going, and just really working my way up through the divisions. I had been a high school coach for 2 years, and I enjoyed that. I sometimes I think I could have stayed there forever. If the money was a little bit better, I would have ended up just, such a pure experience for those 2 to 3 years that I did that. But like I said, I think every time you go a level, you understand better the kid or the athlete that you're dealing with. You understand the climate of what you're involved in, and then you have comparisons. And so I wouldn't have changed it for the world. I don't know if I could have ever been an assistant. I know I had been offered, I had interviewed. I didn't like it. It's not something that was for me. I thought that the staff that I was able to get, because there's a lot of times I had no staff, and so to get staff, once you do get a staff, it's important to you. There are people that mean a lot to you because you know what it was like when they weren't there, and that was something at Fresno State that I got to do at the end, was to develop the administrative title and really put that stamp on how strength and conditioning coaches should be treated throughout the nation. In my opinion,
No, I like that. You touch on all the stuff, like leaning on people in the area, so the experts. And when you were at Texas, you were basically working with pro athletes just at a college age, and and then you moved on to New Mexico Highlands and actually utilizing the people that are still around you and keeping in touch with all those athletes and players. And I mean, the big thing you talk about, taking a job that no one else wants. When you do that, and when you start a program like that, like, you feel so much better about having ownership over it. And then you end up leaving and you're irreplaceable. It's hard. It's hard for someone to find anybody that can fill those shoes anymore. And it's good to cement your own legacy on those things. But I think the biggest thing that I kind of take away from it is every single job you ever picked, you believed in the coaches, you believed in the people, and you believed that you could cement your own legacy on that, which is bigger than chasing a logo or seeing the prestige of working in the Power Five or something like that. And you work the ladder up to make sure that, hey, I've got high school experience, I've got big time experience, I got D2, FCS, FBS, and you made sure that all those experiences built so that you could work onto it. And now in your kind of new profession, you're working with some professional guys. So taking all those experience now, being at the highest level where there is no above and beyond professional, what are some obstacles you kind of see that are different from the collegiate setting that now, from your experience working it, that you can apply to working with professional guys?
You know, I think that once again, you know, even the people I work with now are people that I've had a long time relationship with. And so I don't think even though I've changed into a private sector, or I'm looking forward to being more part of the CSCCA Masters, you know, officials, and really having a little footprint and learning more about that going forward. And I believe that the athletes that you're dealing with in this level, it's even more so difficult because there are no obstacles. Because kind of like in Texas, where you could get whatever you want to develop these people, but if they're not developed, then there's a problem, you know. And I think being able to really take away your ego and feeling like you need to have every say in the situation, which I believe that my last 5 years at State, that I was away from that ego part where I could really just look at people and say, hey, what do you do good? I want you to do that, and step away and have that lack of control for a while, which is hard sometimes, I think, when we were, especially when you have nobody and you know it has to get done, and you're so self-reliant as a strength coach sometimes that you forget that you can let other people help you. And I don't think it changes when you go to this level, because now you have more experts that you can get in contact with. So now it's like finding the right expert, you know, whether
Right.
there's, and the other thing is being able to, like we always have done, all of us, is still. And so if you get the right expert, you know, like you bring those people in and you really sit there. You know, we've done it with the Eldoa that was kind of off the wall. You know, I believe in off the wall stuff. You know, Bill Romanowski, me and him are always going back and forth about the anti-aging. That's something that's big, you know, and I don't think it ever changes, you know, and with this climate that we're dealing with now, I think it's more important, you know, to have this lifestyle that not only promotes health, but mental health and, you know, spiritual, and being outside. Like, I'm never inside. As you can see, like I'll stay outside at least 6 hours a day, and mountain biking. And, you know, these are some things I didn't have the opportunity to do, and we're working. And so really being able to get in touch with the other side of nature, and not being stuck in a weight room, in an office, or in a meeting room talking about circles, you know, this gives you the opportunity to really feel what you're teaching, and to have it organically from you, and, you know, not really writing a workout for 1,000 people, or, you know, but really sitting down and saying, like, what do we need to do today? You know, I'm big into this Aura ring right now, and really mapping out like where I am on a balance level. And I think that that's been my whole calling right now, is being balanced, and really having the understanding of, you know, what your HRV is in the morning before you start writing a program. And imagine if you could do that for every athlete, you know, in a football program. And why not? You know, why not be able to just say, hey, we got to take it slow on this guy. And I think that's where I was going to when we were with at the end with Terry at basketball. And I think it was a one-on-one. You know, a lot of those athletes that I have relationships with now was because I would train them one-on-one, and I didn't like to do big groups because they were so different, and it just didn't make any sense to me anymore to put everybody in one group, unless it was an in-season team building thing or something like that. But I felt like they belonged on the court, you know, and that was the other thing is being a football player my whole life and coaching football through Texas most of my career, and then really coming into it and saying, you know what, I want to be a basketball guy. And this was at the time when there was a big change and all these basketball guys were getting football guys to run their programs. And so that was cool, just to be able to go into the whole nother setting and actually know what people are talking about when we're breaking down film and in the house and we're saying like, oh, this guy's going here, and you're understanding the terminology, and you're like, man, I've come a long way that I can understand basketball terminology. So I've enjoyed it. You know, I know it's a little bit more pressure because you never know what's going to happen the next year. And the league is so, especially now, you know, I'm not involved as much as I would like to be. I'm stuck outside the bubble. But I also believe that the people that I work with and the person I work with, if you've done your job and you've enjoyed the process, that they know what to do without you. And I think that's where we sometimes get it misconstrued, is that our job is to be obsolete with our staff, with our athletes, is to not be needed anymore at a certain point. And that's okay. And that's when you know you're doing a good job, not just from a strength and conditioning standpoint, but from a holistic standpoint, a totality of this person's a better person from us being together and working together than he was when we were together, when we first met. You know, and that goes, and it's transcendent. It's through family members, it's through staff, it's through friends, it's through everybody. And I think bringing that to the table changes your whole philosophy of how you're going to train an athlete.
That's awesome. I really like that, because I think a lot of times either coaches or mentors or anybody, they try to hoard information so that the people that they're trying to teach always feel like they need them. And you've never held back on any of the stuff. You're always pushing the envelope, trying to learn new things, just like you are right now. And you test the training on yourself and everything. And whatever you learn, you give it to them completely unfiltered, so that, like you said, they can be self-sustaining, and eventually they may not need your services as much. And like it is with your current position with your guys, maybe you're not even talking to them about strength conditioning all the time, but you still have that foundation built from strength conditioning that now you can discuss with them about lifestyle and different habits and rituals, and be someone that they can talk to about maybe family issues or other things involved in their life. And honestly, I think that for you, that really shaped your coaching philosophy. A lot of it comes from that samurai culture. I know you love to read a lot of those books and study kind of their society and their warriors. What do you think that you can take from all your learnings and from samurai actually apply to your training and your coaching?
You know, when I first got into studying warring cultures, it was at University of New Mexico, Bronco Mendenhall, and he would have us study a different warring culture every spring, or every 3 months he'd switch it. And so the one that caught my attention the most was the samurai. And, you know, I studied Native American, the whole Plains Wars. And, you know, I go into when I went to Italy, I got really big into the gladiator, being around that Colosseum. And so I've those are some of the ones I've gravitated towards, but the samurai seems to be the one that most fits a strength and conditioning character, I feel, because the Bushido, you know, being able to understand that the daily tasks or the mundane tasks of cleaning the weight room or picking up trash in between the parking lot and your door, or just straightening up the facility at the end of the day so it walks in. I mean, all these certain things, they kind of fall back into the way they were taught, or the way they taught their warriors. And to me, it's fascinating, you know, and being able to understand and transition that into today it's been fun for me. And I do it all the time. You know, whatever books I could find on it. There's a lot out there on it. I mean, there's some podcasts that I've listened to with it. Even training with the tools, like I love training with the clubs now. You know, I have this thing where I bike and box. You know, and Jackson Winks out here is a huge part of Albuquerque. And so some of my clients will go out there and we'll train in the facilities in the octagon. And, you know, Keith Jardine, who played with me up in New Mexico Highlands, was a big advocate for me going into some of the UFC. And I never did. I wish I would have now, but I couldn't see it. I mean, I thought I was a football guy, but I didn't think it was gonna get so big. And seeing all the fights last night, I love it, man. It's fun to watch, and I like that training. I think that primal instinctual training not only translates to sport, but because it translates to your mood, to your being able to get that aggressiveness out, being able to understand combinations like chess or how to get out of the way with footwork, it all. So a lot of my training is just boxing and biking, and I for the first time in my life that I can remember since maybe the time I met Arnold Schwarzenegger, I actually walk into this garage. I'm building a garage weight room here at my mother's farm. And I walk in there, and I'm doing it with all Samson equipment because they're right down the road. And I walk in there, and I measured it out, and I was a consultant for a long time, designing facilities in Houston area under Pro Maximum. And this is my first time I've not bought Sornex or that. And it's my first Samson racks, and so I'm pumped about them, and I'm bringing them in there, and it's something about being home and creating this. And I'm actually, the dojo is what we call it, but I'm putting a lot of different art of samurais on the wall, and I want it to be something that's not just for me to go in there and train, but it's something that's going to help keep my family well and promote them to be healthier. And it's something that we do together but alone. This is how I feel. It's something that we do for each other but by ourselves. And it's been fun to do that, and it's amazing just to be able to walk outside my yard and have like a river right there and just be riding my bike. I saw a bobcat there the other day, and I got kind of freaked out. I stopped, and I didn't know what to do. I was with the green eyes. His green eyes locked on me, man. And so I see a lot of different things like that, and it's such a opposite from what I'm used to being around. Usually without this pandemic, we would have been flying all over the country training, and I'd have probably been based in San Francisco and the Miami area. And so this has been the first time that I get to go back to my roots and really remember what it's like to be part of the, get grounded in the earth, man. My mother has this huge garden, so I'll put my feet in there. And I think this is what samurai art brings you, is the mundane and being in the presence of what's going on, and understanding how important that itself is, and not time traveling, not trying to go too far forward or remember or regret in the past. And a lot of my the readings I'm doing lately too, Lenny Bassam, some great boxing trainers. I've been really into it and watching how they train and really trying to correlate that to basketball, and even thinking about even bringing in some of these boxing trainers to do some stuff with some of my athletes, so that I just think they enjoy it, and I think that's what we forget, is how fun this stuff is. And it took me a while to remember. I haven't been able to program for a year. I've been out of the thing, even before that, I probably had you do most of my programming, so I wasn't even into it. I just remember turning into a paper pushing meeting guy, hooked to a Google Calendar by my neck. And so to get away from that and go back to the purity of what we are and why we started this thing was the goal, and I think I've gone close to it, and really incorporating their meditational techniques. There's so much stuff out there with Insight Timer and Oak, and man, I mean, the information right now that you could get and learn during this time is amazing, and this pause is just, it took me a while to get my creative spark, but I'm back now. And I really feel like the way we're going is lifestyle. And I'm building my parents a lifestyle chamber where it has a sauna in it, and they have their cold, and they have their recovery boots, and I put them all on it. Even though they're working in a farm and they're outside, I'm like, this is something you need to incorporate to get better harvest in the fall, and I think that's the point, is you could put these techniques that we've been practicing all our career, you could put them into any context of life. And they're not just for athletes. They're not just for, they're for everybody, and it's something that the samurai believed in, and the Bushido was the code, the 753, and it was how you treated yourself, your self-image, your spirituality of bringing stuff back and sharing it with people you love. These are things we do as strength coaches naturally, and so it's a definite full circle story, I think, in my case, and looking back on my career as a strength coach and being completely content with it, walking out of there as a master's, it's something it was important to me at the beginning, and to finish that was important. But at the beginning, it was the full circle, I still remember myself walking into Coach Madden's office and him saying, "There's only two reasons you're here, and you're not a very big guy, so you better be a smart one, and you better have a niche, because if you don't, we don't need you." And it was sobering. And I think the truth that I was told at a young age as an intern is something that we need to continue to do when we're mentoring these young people, not giving them false hope or telling them inconsistencies, but just having the guts to say, you know what, you're not very good at this and we can do better. And, that was something I always got in trouble for, was speaking the truth, but it sure helps me sleep better at night.
Definitely. I mean, I think you're in your natural element now. And when we work together, I mean, I feel that same way sometimes too, where you're either bound to your paperwork or programming or desk, and you just kind of repeat the same methods over and over again. You don't really get the chance to step outside and pull some new elements in or bring new things to the table. And you touched on all those, like the Aura Ring and learning about HRV and tying in all the things you learn from samurai culture and those lessons and teaching them, because they apply more than just to being a samurai. Those were done hundreds of years ago, that all those lessons still hold true to training, to lifestyle, to health, to any sort of benefit you could possibly get. I mean, you pretty much answered my next three questions right off the bat in that. So
yeah.
Hey, I'll take it. I mean, you touched on some of the methods and other things that you were doing. I know you do other stuff like breath work and your own journaling and contrast baths and stuff. What would you say are, if an athlete's trying to get involved and create their own positive habits and good routine, what would you say the first two or three to really hone in and get started creating their own ritual would be?
I think everyone needs the morning ritual and their afternoon or the evening ritual. I think you have to really go out there and search. I think mentors in this is helpful, at least at the beginning, because it's a fine tuning of your body. I think sleep is the superpower, which is why I wanted to really see where I was at, and that's why I got the Aura. Was I wanted to make sure that I was thinking I was getting sleep, but I wanted to make sure, because I think I've been on it for a month and a half, and right now I could see the difference in my moods, my exercise, the way I train, all these different things, being able to go to bed at a certain time. This stuff is critical. And it's so simple to fix. And I think that was the first thing I do with my athletes, is teach them how to sleep or help them to sleep. And then the second thing is the contrast. You've known me for a while. I don't think I've been three years maybe where I haven't missed a contrast, and really being able to start your day over with it. I always call it 2 days in one. So if you're 12 hours at a weight room and you're in there in the dojo and you're training for 12 hours, and at 1 o'clock you go, instead of eating something at Subway, you go to your spot and you get a little steam and a quick swim, and you come back within that hour and you're a brand new person for the next half of the day, and really jump-starting that nervous system. And so the more I read about that through Dr. Sinclair, and Aubrey Marcus has some great stuff on it. There's so much stuff out there as far as anti-aging, which is what I'm going, with the sauna. The sauna's big. Rogan's big on that. I'm big. I've had the most success with the sauna with my blood pressure, being able to regulate my blood pressure. I've done that within the last 3 months or 6 months. I've gotten it to a place where I don't need any kind of help, in chemistry. And that's important to me. And eating the local, being able to only eat, how did Romo say, only eat animals in the cold that have been killed in the cold when you play in cold weather. As crazy as it was, there is some balance to that. Like when I'm out here in New Mexico, I eat a lot of elk, and I eat a lot of beans that are from the area here, or chilies and things like that. So it really I think it's important to eat where you're at. Whether if you're in Miami, you better be eating seafood, because that's what they do great. And understanding that. That's the one thing about being in the professional ranks, is having the chef, and that was something that's really changed my life, is being able to have food ready, available, and understanding your diet and what you need from a blood testing thing. That's something that once this thing calms down, I want to get back into is blood testing every 3 months and just finding out where you're deficient. And I think that'll change everything. But once you feel optimal, it's hard not to. It's hard not to. So I think that's the gauge is, what does it take for you to feel good every single day? And some days when you don't, can you rally back and still feel amazing that day? And, it comes out in every way. It comes out in your relationships with your wife or your whatever. It comes out with your kids, and it comes out in the way you create. And so I would suggest that there's some really good study materials, Marcus Aurelius and the morning routine's great. I found myself coloring in the evenings, and I take away the blue light lately, and because I want my deep sleep, and I get a great REM, but my deep sleep's about 10% off. And so I've been doing some coloring, and I've been doing some I don't journal as much because I think, but I'll color some different kinds of pictures, and it kind of puts me in a little bit of a trance. And I'll listen to some mellow cello music, and and things like that. You think they don't work, but the next day when you wake up and you have a great score and you're jumping out the door, you're like, okay, I did something right. And I think that this whole year has been about that. Is being about how to be the most authentic and healthy self that you can be, because that's the only way I can help the people that I care about. Like I can't have a day off, and right. I think as strength coaches, we know that. It's like, if you could count how many days off that you could take in a year, you could do it on a hand. You could do it on a hand, and it'd probably be counting from travel. Oh, that was a day off. I didn't have to do anything. I slept today. It could be from there being an assembly or it's winter break. I mean, you don't get a lot of time off. So having the time to really calculate and set your body in rhythm has been one of the biggest blessings I've had this year, for sure.
I like that. I mean, that's great advice for coaches and athletes alike, and just trying to find your own unique routine that works for you. Like you said, you gave a lot of great examples about how you can get involved, and the biggest thing is to just start and see what works, and it starts to snowball. When you do something positive, it puts you in a better position to be creative or better serve your athletes, or honestly just fulfill yourself and feel better for the rest of the day. And if you get off the path, just try to get right back on it away. And I think one of the biggest things, like I know when you started doing those and really kind of honing in what was specific to you, like I always thought of that you can't really help others until you can help yourself. And I thought that was a great reason to start doing the rituals and having a good routine, because if I was bringing a negative attitude to a team session, it affects the whole team and it's completely shot. And as a leader, as a coach, that's huge. And as a competitor, if you bring that same mindset in, like your performance is going down. So creating a good routine and having some good benefits that carry over impact your performance, impact your coaching ability and everything. I just think those are great. So,
yeah. And being able to take that Bushido or that code wherever you go, I think that's been the next thing. Is it's easy to do when you're at home and you're in your element, but can you do it when you're on a road game? Can you do it when you're staying somewhere that you're not comfortable with? Can you still find a way to incorporate those practices so that it's like you never missed a beat? And that's been the hardest challenge for me, is with this the pandemic and everything going on, is you're wherever you go, you're going to be there for a while. And you got to really be able to adapt and fall right back into that practice. Because if you don't, then everything that you had tried to create would have been for nothing, right? In vain. So I think that would be your final step, or on your way to your final step, because there probably is no final one. But on the way would be to take what you have wherever you go, regardless of the environment.
Right. No, definitely. That's great advice, because it's a lot easier when your environment at home is set up perfect, but on the road or being somewhere unfamiliar, you better be pretty sound with your principles, otherwise, and with your discipline, otherwise it's going to falter. Yeah. That's big. Hey, so we end the show with a finisher, just like any kind of training session. So we got 4 quarters with 4 questions, and then potentially overtime.
You've always had good games. Go for it, man. I love it.
Hey, so answer them as quick as you want or expand on them if you want to, but we'll get after it right now. So, biggest influence in strength conditioning and favorite athlete growing up?
Barry Sanders probably was my biggest influence. Would be, it's the same person, right?
It can be.
Barry Sanders, yeah. Barry
Barry
Sanders.
Sanders.
That's the man right there.
That works. So on days you're not coaching or training, what can you usually be found doing? What's your go-to hobbies?
You know, I do a lot of research, a lot of YouTube, a lot of reading, a lot of different audibles got me hooked right now. I'm still on my my Bushido study in Japan, and I've been on that for a while. I also, I have 3 or 4 different books I start, and I'll just kind of go back to them. There's one I read in the morning that's been really good to me, and so I think I never really have an idle hand. Like this afternoon, I'm gonna go do about 8 miles on the mountain bike, and then I just like to have a good balance of reading, working, sleeping, and having a good dinner. I try to go to sleep by 9:45, so I don't have a lot of time. I have one of my guys playing tonight at 7, so I'll be watching some NBA tonight and getting crazy, jumping around the floor. And so that's I always enjoy watching my players play, and it's a part of the day I look forward to. So that's one of the benefits of Sunday night. But other than that, I think it goes by so quick. Like I don't have enough time to get everything I want in, even if it's just sitting with my mom in her garden down the road and just kind of having a glass of wine, that's going to be something that's important for the evening too.
I like it. If you weren't coaching, what career do you think you'd be in?
I wasn't coaching. I think, I was watching this G.I. Joe, man. All I have is camouflage. Like I have 10 different camouflage bags and hats. I said, maybe I would have been in the military. Maybe I would have done some kind of PT in there. I know that's I always like the what it brings, but it's to understand why, with the strength and conditioning being that type of environment anyway. But I like the uniform. I like that. I think I would have probably went that direction.
Okay. Number one quality for a successful athlete and number one quality for a successful coach?
Anytime you're going to be successful is through visualization, in my opinion. What you see is what you get, what you think about. That's something I'm really talking about right now. And one of the books I'm reading is the visualization of what you want your lifestyle to look like. If we're talking about that, it would be that. It would be being able to visualize what you want it to look like. Where I'm at now started 10 years ago. It was years of visualizing this and putting myself in the right direction to get there. And then not really knowing when it happens because it kind of smacks you across the face like, ooh, I got what I wanted. Now what, right? And that's a good feeling sometimes.
I like it. And over time, I figured you could earn this one. So, what's your most memorable coaching experience?
Oh, like for me as the coach.
Yeah, like experience either been, it could be playing, it could be in the weight room, at a game.
I think the experience with me was winning the 2016 Mountain West there at Fresno State in basketball. Because I had those guys since they were freshmen, and just to come from nothing to being one of the best in the league and seeing all those players go on to play and pros has just been that was a really strong peak right there, and the way the timing ended up where we got to go to Italy together and then win it together, and those guys, I see them in my face right now. They're characters, man, and they're all good people.
I like it. Hey, well, I really appreciate you coming on today, Coach. I mean, you got, like I said, when I first got to Fresno State, you were the guy that brought me in. You took a chance with me, and you were no filter from the beginning interview till when you left, and it's been nonstop. I continue to lean on you all the time. So I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing with our audience.
Yeah, you too, my friend. I appreciate you. Thank you.
All right, man. Take care.
You too. Bye.
That's it for this episode of The Strength Game. Thank you again to this week's guest and to our sponsors, Cerberus Strength. Be sure to connect and keep up with our guests at the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider to stay up to date on all future episodes. Also, check us out on YouTube and CoachO'Brien.com, where you can find all the video versions of these episodes, as well as show notes, episode schedule, and much more. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome and appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week for another great episode of The Strength Game.